discussions on this topic, and we shall continue from there. What I thought is, let me just complete the slides, and then I'll try to finish by 9:30, and then half an hour of discussion time where we go through all the questions, and all deliberations can happen then. Will that be okay for all?
Yes, ma'am. I think that's good.
Yeah. So from where we left, we understood the basic, the wings of supply and the extended arm, where we have 7, 1A, B, C, and all these variations. And we understood that. And now we are coming to other forms of supply, where there are a whole lot of different terms, which can be very confusing because names look almost similar, like exempt, non-taxable, zero rated, nil rated. So, and even though they look so similar, the difference in terms of the portal and how it is to be treated, has a lot of implication, and any small mistake in this will be very costly, so that we cannot afford to make any mistakes without understanding these basic concepts. So one such one is the exempt supply. So exempt supply, you can take it as a very large bucket and includes any nil rated and those transactions which are completely exempt under section 11. So section 11 is the mother section which gives the thing for all the exemption notifications that are issued. So under this section 11 only, all the exemption notifications are issued. So it exempt supply includes non-taxable, nil rated, and notified exempt supplies. So this is a very big bucket, you could say. And coming to non-taxable supplies are those supplies which are not leviable to tax under this act, is defined under section 2 subclause 78. So only two things which I could think of is the alcoholic liquor for human consumption and sale of land. Sale of land being a state subject under list 2, and sale of liquor which is not includable in the GST itself, and it is in the constitution also, it is mentioned in article 266 that it is not includable. So that will be the non-taxable supplies. And zero rated will be when you are doing an export or import transaction. So these are basically the few forms which can be a little confusing, but when you go to the definition and try to understand, it becomes very clear, because there is no ambiguity as far as this section is concerned. So any questions on exempt, non-taxable, zero rated supply? So I'll proceed. GST on import and export transactions. This is also a supply. I think it will be covered sometime later when we take up the IGST Act. But simply to understand the basic concept of export of goods, it is taking the goods out of India to a place outside India. It is physical. There is no deemed export of goods. It has to be export, taking it out of India itself, that to be called an export of goods. It has to cross the customs frontier of India and go to a location outside India. And we need to see what is India to understand whether it is export of goods. So each word, India also is defined in the IGST Act. So we need to understand the definition correctly, and in order to classify whether it is an export of goods or not. Import of goods means bringing into India from the place outside India. It is just a corollary of the export of goods. Import of services means that where a supplier is located outside India, recipient is in India, and the place of supply is outside India. So all these are very, very important. The location of the supplier, the location of the recipient, and the place of supply. So place of supply is a separate list of provisions where we have in the IGST Act. So that also has to be deliberated in detail in order to understand. And what is export of services? There are 5 conditions which is specified for export of services. The basic 3 condition is that the supplier should be in India, recipient should be outside India, the place of supply should be outside India. An additional 2 condition is that The payment should be received in convertible foreign exchange, and the recipient and the supplier are not merely establishment of distinct person. In the sense, they are not only some branch office or license office, and they are not registered under the laws of that country. Only then it will be eligible to be called as a export of service. So as you see, why these definitions are important, in the sense, such transactions enjoy a zero rating of the transaction. Therefore, only when you satisfy these conditions, the zero rating, you will be eligible to do zero rated supply. Otherwise, it will not be. And the transactions in the course of import and export are defined under the IGST Act. So import of goods till they cross the custom frontier of India will be import. Import of services, we already understood the definition. Export of goods or services, supply of goods or services to or by an SEZ will also be in the course of import or export. Supply to international tourists. There are specific sections where all these things are covered. Any other supply in the taxable territory, which is not an intrastate supply. So this is like a residual section. It is in the IGST Act, which says that if it is not intrastate, it will be interstate. Something like a residual category, that if it is not intra, then it will become inter. And India means territory of India, referred to in Article 1 of the Constitution. Its territorial waters, seabed, subsoil, underlying waters, continental shelf, exclusive economic zone and any maritime zone, and the airspace above its territory and territorial waters, which is defined in section 256. So this is all about import and export. And then another form, very important form of supply, is a works contract. It's coming under Schedule 2, which is a deemed supply. Unlike a regular contract for supply of goods or supply of services, works contract has something more to it. That is, it has a concept of transfer of property in goods as well, and the service portion. So it is mostly an indivisible supply, wherein you have the component of goods and services. So the definition is given in 2 subclause 190. Means contract for building, construction, fabrication, erection, installation, fitting out, improvement, modification, repair, maintenance, renovation, alteration of any immovable property. So the important concept is it has to be an immovable property. There has to be a transfer of property in goods, whether as goods or in some other form, involved in the execution of the contract. So these are the two important aspects of works contract, where there is an immovable property and there is also a transfer of property in goods in this transaction. So Schedule 2 specifically clarifies that it is a supply of service, because there are both goods and services. We may have this confusion whether you will classify it as a supply of goods or supply of services. Schedule 2 has clearly given that it will be a transfer of supply of services. That is about works contract. And certain recent circulars have been issued with respect to concept of supply. Very recently, they have told that taxability of shares held in subsidiary company by holding company will not be a supply of service by the holding company to the subsidiary company, merely because some shares are held by the holding company. So because we had seen notices being issued by the department, wherein they told that all the share capital that is invested by the holding company to the subsidiary company is a supply of service, and therefore you need to pay 18% GST on that. So clarification has been issued on that regard. Again, clarification on taxability of service by an office or an organization in one state to an office of that organization in another state, both being distinct persons. With respect to cross charge and ISD, I think we had a detailed discussion 2 weeks back on this, and they have very clearly clarified on what are the legal aspects with respect to third-party services and internally generated services by head office to branch office. And again, services supplied by director of a company or body corporate in his personal or private capacity. We know that director services sitting fees is liable to RCM. So now department has clarified that if the director were to rent his immovable property to the company or a director in his personal capacity, then there will be no RCM liability. It will be on forward charge basis only. So these are the recent circulars. Then there was some question on barter transaction in the previous session that we had. So I wanted to explain it with an example between barter and exchange. So Mr. Jairaj is a practicing cost accountant, provided services to Mrs. A Limited, a dealer of laptops. In return, A Limited given to Mr. Jairaj 2 laptops. Here there is a two-way supply that takes place. So it is a classic example of a barter transaction where Mr. Jairaj is supplying services to A Limited in the form of bookkeeping or whatever consulting services, where A Limited in return has given 2 laptops to Mr. Jairaj being a cost accountant. So there is 2 supplies that take place. So the valuation for this supply is there will be 2 supplies instead of 1. So somebody was asking what will be the value of supply, whether the value will be the consulting charges charged by Mr. Jairaj for such services, or whether it will be the cost of the laptops that are usually sold at market price. So here Mr. Jairaj will be charging whatever the value of the supplies he charges in the market for such services, and A Limited again will be liable to charge GST on the supply of the two laptops and the open market value. So hence tax will be payable by both of them. And exchange, on the other hand, we have seen number of examples wherein I have taken this example of a car exchange. So you will see in mobiles also where you give your old car and then you buy a new car, and you give your old phone and you pay some extra consideration and you get a new phone. So this is basically an exchange where the goods are of the same category. So those will be exchanged. Unlike barter, barter will be of 2 unidentical goods or services. It could be both. But exchange is always with respect to goods only of the same category. That's what I feel. Though there is no particular definition for barter and exchange. So in this case, Trident Auto sold a new car worth rupees 6 lakhs in exchange of an old car, along with monetary consideration of rupees 4 lakhs to Mr. B for the said purchase. The taxable value will be what? So the cost of the new car is 6 lakhs, but Mr. B is giving his old car back. And plus additionally, he is giving a valuable consideration of 4 lakhs in cash. So the value of the old car is around 2 lakhs rupees is what we can assume. And the tax will be on 6 lakhs only and not on 4 lakhs. It has to be on the open market value or on the value that it is sold for. And B, on the other hand, has to discharge tax on the sale of the old car if he is a taxable person and that it is used in the course of furtherance of his business. Again, there was one question last week on the activities of or transactions of a club or a resident welfare association where they collect money for Ganesha festival or Navratri, and whether GST is applicable on those. If consideration is voluntary, that you may contribute whatever you want, will that be a valid consideration? Is it will it be defined as a taxable supply, or a taxable event occurs when somebody is asked to donate whatever they can? I don't think, to my mind, I feel it cannot be a taxable supply simply because it is voluntary. There is no hard and fast rule on anyone to contribute any particular amount. So, and therefore I feel that, we also have this clarification from CBIC stating that circular number 116, just a second. So they have clarified wide circular number 116 and said that when you get some sort of a benefit from the donation, like your name may be written in a small print under the goods that you have donated or on the AC, if it is not aimed at giving publicity to the donor in a manner that it would be an advertising or promotion of his business, then it can be safely considered there is no supply of service for a consideration. There is no obligation. Quid pro quo. That is what they said. It is mandatory for any taxable supply to have quid pro quo. Otherwise, it has to come in Schedule 1 transaction. If it is not a Schedule 1 transaction, then there is no obligation of quid pro quo. Then you cannot say it is as a supply. So donation gift will be outside the scope of supply. So these things, I hope it is clear. I pause here. You have any concerns? You can let me know.
Yeah, ma'am, so we have two questions. So I think.
Yeah, I think we'll take this up in the end because
Okay.
I'm trying to finish the slides by 9:30. So
Okay,
that
okay.
we'll. Okay, I'll continue.
Yeah.
Is my pace very fast or is it okay?
No, I think perfect. It's perfect.
Okay, thank you. So we have next some questions for all of you because I don't want it to be one way round. So distribution of electricity, is it a supply? Anyone can answer.
Yes,
Yes, Virendra ji. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
exempt.
It is an exempt supply because electricity is a state subject and there is no tax of GST on electricity. Okay, next question.
So the
Next
exemption, ma'am, the exemption is limited to that utility if that is distributing the electricity. Otherwise, the exemption would not be applicable so far as I understand.
So ideally what Virendra ji is trying to say I am a building owner and I am getting reimbursement for the electricity charges from my tenants. In that case, I think he's trying to share that will be taxable as a reimbursement.
No. This distribution of electricity by the electricity department itself. Then in that case.
Yeah.
Okay.
Madam, electricity, shall I talk? Am I
Yeah,
audible?
ma'am. Yeah, ma'am. Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Paul, sir, please.
Yes. Madam, electricity is goods even during the VAT period or prior to that, whether electricity or goods or not, that was the question. Okay. So we used to, jocularly, we used to tell. So you touch and then feel. If you get shocked, then it means goods. Otherwise, it is service. Okay. So, but in the exemption notification number 2/2017, there is a specific exemption for electricity. So
Yes,
electricity, but if the landlord is collecting even the actuals and then remitting, then the department may take it as a composite supply. The primary concept is with respect to rent. So
correct, sir.
rent for that electricity also you have to pay. It will be on the safer side. Some of the AAR also sell like that only. So it is better to take it whenever there is a rental agreement. Even though you collect the actual amount, you have to pay as a composite supply. This is my opinion. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Perfect, sir. Yes, sir. So what we understand is distribution of electricity by the electricity company is an exempt supply wide notification. But if the landlord were to collect the electricity charges from the tenant, then that would be liable to tax. Okay, let's continue.
Madam, there is one more aspect to it. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
Yes,
no
ma'am.
problem. Yeah.
Yes,
This
ma'am.
is the case of companies who have their own power generation units, where after consumption for the purpose of their manufacture, they sell it off to the government.
Yes.
They have these transformers. So will that also come under the exempt supply? That should be under exempt supply, and accordingly they'll have issues with respect to claiming
ITC reversal.
tax credit. Yes. ITC
Yeah.
reversal also will be applicable in such case.
Yes, ma'am. I think that's a very valid point because we have seen within large IT enclaves, there is a separate power generation unit where they supply power to all the units established within that enclave, like an IT complex or a manufacturing zone. So in those cases, I think yes, they will have to do this thing. XYZ donates old laptops to charitable schools which were used for business purpose, whether it will be a supply.
Ma'am, there is one point that, I mean, even when we're talking about the earlier donations, will this not, see, sometimes what happens is when these laptops are donated or when these contributions happen from companies, okay, the name of the company is displayed somewhere. So then that being the case, it comes under the sponsorship services and not mere donations. So
Yeah, sponsorship is completely something totally different to donation. But
no, will it not be painted that way? Supposing I give the laptop for the charitable school, say 100 laptops I'm giving, let us hypothetically assume. In all the 100 laptops, I keep my company's name on the laptop. But would it not amount to an advertisement, or will it not be covered that way? That was this done having since the donation topic is being discussed. I just wanted to raise this doubt.
Yeah, ma'am. I mean, that's what. Yes, sir.
Supplement Renuka ma'am's query, I'll tell you practically what is happening now after the changes in income tax because of the recent Supreme Court judgment that, they cannot make the other service. So they cannot say a charitable trust, they cannot give advertising services and all, right? So they're not now when they're organizing any program. For souvenirs earlier, they used to take advertisements and publish advertisements. So now they're taking it as if they're giving a donation. So whether though it is being told in forms in the bill, in the invoice, it's being told as donation, and it is not being shown, no advertisement is published in the souvenir, whether that will be treated as a sponsorship only. So that is something, if you could share.
Yeah. So there is a thin line of difference, between, you could always argue that there is no quid pro quo in return, and it is used for charitable purpose and those kind of things. But in this present example, it is used for business purpose and then given. So obviously, there will be a tax impact because ITC would have been claimed on this transaction. But generally, if you say that you are just giving it, out of for charity purpose, we have to go with the circular and clarification, and always there are two views that are possible, and we will have to fight it out only with the department.
And the problem here will be only that litigation where the officer will say, why you have put your name in the laptops, and so it is only advertisement, and they might charge tax on that.
Yeah, because even in the circular it says it is which is said to be an expression of gratitude. When I think if the donee puts a small name or something that given by so and so and not aimed at giving publicity, then it would not be supply is what they have told. But if it is an old laptop and already name is printed which cannot be removed, then we cannot say that it is aimed at making a advertisement. So we'll have to see with the facts of the case.
True. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So Mr. Das purchased a car for personal use and after a year sold it to a car dealer for rupees 2 lakhs. So it is a personal asset and it has been sold for 2 lakhs. So anyone would like to go for it? So it is not a supply as it is not used for business purpose. He purchased AC for business purpose and after 2 years transfers to a director without consideration. So Anyone for this without consideration?
Supply, madam, it will be supply.
Yes, because very simple, we have to go with schedule 1. Whenever without consideration, immediately our mind has to remember that it will, whether it comes under schedule 1 transactions. Schedule 1 transactions are very, very clear. So we just go with schedule 1 and then we decide. Okay, then I have one case law which I picked on ABOT. I will just share that. I think we have to read it. It's a very nice case law to be read. It has multiple times the case has gone to advance ruling authority. Are you able to see the screen now? ABOT Healthcare.
No, we can see the flow. We can see the flow actually.
Oh, sorry.
There is a flow chart.
How about now?
Yeah, now we can see.
Yeah, ABOT Healthcare. It's a pharmaceutical company. It places its diagnostic instruments at the premises of several hospitals. They have some instruments which they are keeping in several hospitals, labs for their users for a specified period without any consideration. So they're not taking any consideration for the instruments that are placed. To execute the aforesaid placement of instrument, the appellant is ABOT. Okay, appellant assessee inter alia entered into a reagent supply and instrument use agreement with various unrelated hospitals, labs, etc., called the customers. So reagent doesn't mean principal agent or something. It is a chemical which is used for some testing purpose. That is why it's called reagent supply. The ownership in the instrument that is kept continues to be with ABOT, and all right, title, interest in the instrument vested with the assessee at all times during the continuity of the agreement with no consideration charged from the customer. So the instrument will be placed at all the hospitals, and the hospitals are at liberty to use the instrument in a way they want it. And at the end of the term, they are supposed to return the instrument to ABOT. But there is no consideration that is going to be charged from the customers. The customers only had a permission to use the instrument provided to the hospital for the specified period, and the instruments were returnable at the end of the specified period or at the earlier termination of the agreement. So if the agreement terminates, then you are supposed to return. So what is the consideration that the ABOT is getting out of doing this? So that is the catch of this case. As per the terms of the agreement, customers were required to purchase reagents, calibrators, disposals, all these things which are to be used along with the machine at the prices specified in the agreement. So in the agreement, they have purchased that all these consumables have to be purchased from ABOT only through its distributors and at the price that is stated there, and no other chemicals or other disposables can be used on this machine. So this machine will work only with ABOT chemicals and consumables. Okay. The products were supplied by the assessee to its distributors on payment of applicable GST. So the consumables were supplied by the distributors. So ABOT will supply the consumables to all the distributors, and these hospitals have to purchase from the distributors only. The distributors in turn supplied the same to the hospitals, the customers, the end customers. The distributor duly discharged the applicable GST on the price charged for the supply of the said products. There was no direct sale or supply of the products by the assessee to the hospital. That is, ABOT is not selling any consumables to the hospitals directly. It is only through the distributors. So it is the advance ruling, they went for an advance ruling whether the placement of these instruments in the hospitals constitute a supply. That is the question. Where there is no consideration, the parties are not related, whether it constitutes a supply. The Advance Ruling Authority of Kerala held that placement of specified medical instruments to unrelated customers like hospital constituted a composite supply, where the principal supply was a transfer of right to use the instrument for any purpose and accordingly liable to GST under 17 subclause 3 and chargeable to GST. So there is no composite supply and mixed supply, I mean, I have not covered, but on a high level, composite supply is where there is a principal supply and there is an attached supply to it in one transaction, and that only constitutes the composite supply. But here, though there are two different parties, the instrument is being kept by ABOT, and the supplies, the consumables and all those are supplied by a distributor who is also an unrelated party. Even then, the advanced ruling authority held that it is a composite supply. Again, the assessee filed an appeal before the appellate authority for advanced ruling against the order. The appellate authority dismissed the appeal. So that means they also agreed with the advanced ruling authority, saying that it is a composite supply and everything have to be charged to tax together. So the ABOT went to the Kerala High Court. So the dispute was whether provision of a specified medical instrument by ABOT, the assessee, to the customer, namely unrelated parties like hospitals, labs, for use by them without any consideration constitute a supply, and whether it constitutes movement of goods otherwise than by way of supply as per the provisions of the GST law. This was the point of dispute. The court held that it was open for the advanced ruling authority to decide whether supply of instrument was a supply for consideration, but its finding regarding composite supply were wholly without jurisdiction. So they have wholly misinterpreted composite supply definition, and they have artificially said that it is a composite supply. So the advanced ruling could not have held that placement of instrument and supply of reagent is a composite supply for following reasons. The supply of instrument and supply of reagent was by two separate persons, by the assessee and the distributor of the assessee. Supply by two persons cannot be fused together to make it a composite supply. For two supplies to be composite supply, they have to be supplied on as is where is basis at the same time. Thus, in the present case, continuous supply of service, right to use the instrument and periodic supply of goods cannot be a composite supply. The High Court quashed the order of the appellate authority for advanced ruling and the advanced ruling and remanded the matter to the advanced ruling authority for fresh determination of the question posed by the assessee. So they remanded the case back to the advanced ruling authority for fresh consideration. So after the remanding of the High Court, the advanced ruling held that placement of instrument at the premises of the customers, that is hospital, lab, was a supply of service by the assessee as per entry. So now they change their stand from composite supply of goods to supply of service by the assessee as per entry 1B of schedule 2, which provides that any transfer of right in goods without transfer of title is a supply of service. So it is a supply of service. So the AR further held that the obligation of the customer to purchase minimum value of reagents at a specified price and to forfeit the deficit amount in case of short purchase was the motivation for the assessee to enter into the contract with customers, and such obligation constitute a valid consideration for the transfer of right to use the instrument by the assessee. So they said that it is a supply of service, that instrument being placed at the hospital or lab is a supply of service, and the consideration is the minimum price that they are paying for the consumables, and it has to be chargeable to tax. But subsequently, assessee again filed an appeal challenging this before the appellate authority for advanced rulings the second time on this matter. The appellate authority for advanced ruling held that on a plain reading of the terms and conditions of the agreement, it is revealed that the primary intention of the assessee was to enter into an agreement to place the instrument only at the premises of those customers who agreed to purchase the products of the agreement in accordance with the terms and conditions specified in the agreement. The minimum purchase obligation of reagent and forbearance of the customers from using any other reagent than that was prescribed by the assessee served as a consideration for the placement of the instrument and the premises of the customer by the assessee. The AR concluded that an act of assurance from the part of customers for exclusive use of reagents, calibrators, and disposal in the instrument according to approved directions of the assessee, an obligation to purchase minimum assured quantity on the agreed price from the appellant constitute a valid consideration for inducement of the supply against the activity of placement of the instrument by the assessee in the customer's premises. So finally, they concluded that, it is a supply of service, right? On the agreed price from the appellant constituted a valid consideration for inducement, and therefore it will be a supply of service. So how, they moved from a composite supply to a supply of service, and how multiple times, the appellant went to the advanced ruling authority, appellate authority for advanced ruling, and the High Court. I mean, I just wanted to, I took up this case just to highlight the amount of complexity that can, that one can have with one simple transaction. So this is where, I want to conclude my session with this case law. And then we can now take up, any questions, any, your feedback, all those things. Yeah, now I open it to everyone.
This is an excellent case law that you discussed about. I remember that in our group, Venu sir started a similar question, though not with medical instrument, installing a coffee vending machine in the premises of the SSC. And the products are to be supplied, and we had a long discussion, if I remember correctly. If Venu sir is here online, he can just add on to that. And again, this was also a Kerala related issue with the installation of coffee vending machine, whether it was a supply or whether it is a supply of service or whether it is a composite supply of buying all the filling the milk and coffee powder to that. It was already discussed in the group. I just don't remember whether it is an AR or an High Court decision.
Yeah. No, multiple angles, we can look at every transaction from multiple angles, and that many, permutation and combination is possible. And everywhere I feel like whenever we come across any transaction where we are looking at it from us, whether it is a supply or not, I feel we have to minutely go through the terms of the agreement and the, we'll have to basically read the contract itself and understand the essence of the complete transaction before we conclude on, whether it is a supply of goods or supply of services or composite or a mixed supply. So all these things will depend on the terms of the contract, more relating. We cannot conclude based on one case law or it was held like this in this case. No, it has to be on a case-to-case perspective depending on the transaction itself.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. So now we have questions, like we can take up the questions. We can discuss on them.
Yeah. So where do I see the question?
Yeah, madam, in the present case,
Yeah.
for a use of that instrument, the assessee needs to charge on market value, is it?
They are saying the consideration will be the consumables and other things that they supplied. So I don't know how exactly they will be charging it, but initially they said a composite supply, and finally they concluded it is a supply under Schedule 2(1)(b), where it will be a supply of service. So probably because there is no consideration that is charged for the instrument per se being kept at the hospital. It is only the hospitals are buying the consumables, the reagents, and the calibrators from the distributors, for which they are already paying the GST on that. I don't think why a special consideration is required for, only for the instrument that is placed.
No. The final conclusion there was the consideration for this instrument is buying X product at X price. So that term itself is a consideration. So
Correct.
as per section 15, that cannot be used to bill it, because section 15 fails. It is now then valuation rules has to apply. Then again, market value, whether it has to be charged, that is one question. Is there any pricing adjustment that needs for sale of reagent?
Correct. It's all a valid question to be answered. I don't think the value of the reagents has anything to do with this, because the price is, already fixed. Oh yeah, because, there is a machine that is already kept at your premises. So the cost of the reagent calibrators will already be jacked up to some extent, right? because of the machinery that is given to you for free. So obviously, all these costs are already factored in the cost of the reagent. That could be a valid contention from the assessee side to say that there
True.
need not be any further consideration for the placing of the instruments alone.
So I think
Correct.
in my view there will be two views on this. One view would be that we go with the open market value for similar machinery that we are supplying to others. You know, maybe considering that, and maybe the rental that could be considered. Other view is that the recent circular on the warranties, they are saying that when I'm selling an equipment, I'm already including the cost of warranties in it, right? So that is the
Yes.
derivation that is given, and that's why they're saying that if you are supplying spare parts later on during the warranty period, you don't need to charge extra for that, right? So if you
Right.
take a similar derivation from that, maybe the machine which I'm giving to the hospitals, on which I'm giving the consumables and the reagents and the other ancillary products that I'm giving, maybe the cost of the equipment is also inbuilt in that. So that
Yes.
that is another argument that could be taken. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think for the valuation part, the conservative view would be to take it on an open market value and to charge GST on that.
Sir,
Yeah,
for a
and-
second thing, I have just reservation because that warranty thing, it is the same manufacturer, OMB itself is providing free of cost. Here,
Yeah.
the fact is little bit different, like Madam
Because the
explained.
distributor.
The instrument is coming from the different person, and the reagents are coming from the different
Not the
person.
distributor.
Can we apply that circular? Is one of the thing that we need to
No.
look into.
Yeah, that's equally reconciled because see, the warranty example, if you see what is happening, see the TV company is giving to its service center, which is a different distributor altogether. And the service center, which is a different distributor, they are replacing my spare parts. The manufacturing company is not doing it. So even in
True.
that situation also, there are two parties involved in that transaction.
I agree with Arup. What Arup is saying more so because these reagents are manufactured by ABOT themselves, and the machinery will not work with any other reagent or consumables. So you have to use whatever is provided by ABOT, but it is through its distributors. That is the only difference.
So if you have any other views, that also we can take. Yeah.
Yeah, one more thing is there is a minimum commitment about the purchases of the reagents. That itself indicates that the price is inbuilt or the price is jacked up to the extent of the rental charges of the instrument itself.
Exactly.
Right.
So that is how we need to contend. Though department will, say that, advanced ruling authorities always are biased towards revenue, and
Yeah.
all of them will be, for
No.
making it as a separate supply. But it's on us how we fight this case.
Actually, ma'am, this is the stand that we had taken when we got show cause notices for our distributors who are into service centers. This is the exact stand that we had taken. That the cost is already included in the equipment that I'm selling, the mobile phone that I'm selling, the TV that I'm selling. So how can I again charge, separate cost for the spare parts?
Yes, perfect.
So if you have any other questions, like we can take it. We still have some time.
Yeah. There were
And we
few
al-
questions.
We also have,
on-
that is there.
The last week continuation on 71AA, the activities or transactions by a person other than an individual to its members. What is the difference between activities and transactions? So activities, I think, is more broader compared to a transaction. Transaction is on a particular case-to-case instant. So activities could be any kind of activity that, do maybe by a resident welfare association or a club. Any common activities, but transaction is with one person with a specific thing. And as I already clarified in my session that RWA collecting funds for Ganesh Puja and spending for celebration. So if the collection is on voluntary basis, there is no specific rule, then I don't think it can be taken as a supply, because for supply there should be a taxable event as per section 7. We have to satisfy all the conditions that are given and supply. Only then we can call it a supply. There must be a consideration, and it should be or all the conditions that are satisfied in 71AA rather. Only then it can be a supply.
I would like to supplement on that activity to the transaction part. That, what is the difference between activities and transaction? What happens typically is, say I'm a member of a particular club and now I'm going to Mumbai. So my club gives me a certificate saying that I am a bona fide member of this Calcutta club, and I can on exchange basis stay with the Mumbai, say Bombay Gymkhana club. So this is not a transaction. This is just an activity wherein they are giving me a bona fide member certificate basis which I'll get to stay in that Bombay Gymkhana club. And for this, they charge a token amount, maybe 200 rupees, 300 rupees. So those are the activities. And I think transactions would be wherein, they're giving me the place, the banquet hall on rent, or maybe, I'm I'm using the gym, or, I'm using any other facilities of the club. So therein the transactions would come. So activities would fall in some of the activities that have been done by the club, other than, wherein the transactions on a day-to-day basis are involved.
Perfect.
So this could be the difference.
And coming to the next question, value in barter. In a barter, can there be two different values or it should be the same value? As I already clarified, there will be two transactions and it will be taxable on both the sides, both from the seller side as well as the buyer side, if they are taxable. So both has to go through the test of supply and then accordingly taxed. Any thoughts?
Question is, would the value be same? Should the value be the same?
Yeah.
No, it will be different, obviously, right? It cannot be the same. Because in my example, the value of service provided by a cost accountant to his customer and the value of 2 laptops which he is taking an exchange definitely cannot be the same. It has to be the open market value for what the consultant is supplying the services. That has to be the value. And at the same time, from the other side, it will be the cost of the 2 laptops, what he is going to sell. So there is definitely a two-way supply, is what I feel.
So GST or one will both be reporting a different values.
Yeah, definitely, I think.
Yeah. I also
And
agree.
Venu, to your question that you had asked last week, whether say when a newspaper is giving advertisement for a real estate company,
Correct.
right? And the real estate company in exchange giving real estate, say a flat or an office
One
or something
flat, yeah.
to a media company. So in this case, what I've practically seen, what happens is there is a difference which is there, and the balance difference, whatever is there, that is made good through some other adjustments, like maybe say the newspaper advertisement that I'm giving, the value is coming to say 30 lakhs, and the flat that I'm getting is say for 35 lakhs, right? The flat that I'm getting is for 35 lakhs. So what in addition, what I do is for the 5 lakhs, I give in maybe some other kind of service, which is possible from my end. So ideally, I've seen that they try to make it at equal levels, whenever it's possible. For me, for this media and real estate that I've seen.
Yeah,
For
so
others,
when you say let's look at a simple thing that Times
Yeah.
have agreed to publish it for say 1 week, okay, and the other side they have agreed to give the flat. Now
Yeah.
Times rate is 30 lakhs, and
Yeah.
the open market value this flat which is being sold was 35 lakhs. Now,
right?
the question that comes is the builder, should he offer 35 lakhs to the tax? If Times has issued a tax invoice as 30 lakhs, while it is a barter, they will close it in their books 30 lakhs. Now, should the builder record it as 30 lakhs purchase and 30 lakhs sales, or should he record 30 lakhs purchase and 35 lakhs revenue?
Venuji,
Arpit bhai.
देखिए, if we go through Rule 27,
Ah,
which is speaks about value of supply of goods or services where the consideration is not wholly in money.
ah,
Right.
So it starts with where the value of supply of services is for a consideration not wholly in money.
correct.
The value of supply
Ah,
shall be the open market value of such supply.
correct.
So therefore, what Soumyaji is saying is totally correct. That whenever I am selling giving one supply of service and receiving service from another also, value of my supply would be based on the value of the supply with service which I am giving. It cannot be related to what I am receiving in respect of that supply.
Correct.
Because Rule 27 clearly says that the value of supply shall be open market value of such supply. It is
Correct.
not open market value of supply being received in consideration of providing the service. So it's pretty clear that in the example which we have given, that the newspaper is giving advertisement of a builder, and
Correct.
the builder
Yeah.
the flat. So the newspaper would be raising their own invoice, and the builder would be raising their own invoice. And as Arup ji said, that the difference between either be settled by another supply of service or by way of discount.
Yeah, because when
Exactly.
here
So
we
I won't say that it can be another supply of service. Because supply of service is agreed is only this. So it has to be, I will record 30 lakhs only as my purchase and I'll give the discount for the 5 lakhs.
Definitely. Yes. Yes.
and we have to understand in this example of media and real estate, they have their own compulsions. The media agency, they have a rate card. So if
Correct.
they are selling a space to say ITC at say some at some rate, they cannot sell to me at a different rate until there's a different promotion discount going on. Similarly, for the real estate vendor, if they are selling it to other, as Arpit was now sharing about the open market value, they are selling it to other flat owners at a certain cost, say 5,000 rupees per square feet. So suddenly they cannot come to me either for 2,000, 4,000 or 6,000. So that again is a challenge.
Yeah,
Sir,
see,
I just want to add
both
one
keeps
point in
openly sharing about their
Hello.
market value. Both have different profit.
Am I audible?
margins. So that way, still there would be a negotiation and there would be a different price.
Yeah, there are a difference in price. That is, normally we have seen that there is a difference in price. And what they do is they again give a small ad, say quarter ad or something like that, and they make good for that.
So,
Vivek
sir,
ji,
yes, sir.
या आप कुछ बोलना चाहते, ऐड करना चाहते थे?
यस सर, थैंक यू सर। वैसे अर्पित सर ने बताया ही है कि रूल 28 किस तरीके से रीड कर रहा है। सिमिलर एनालॉजी हम डेवलपमेंट राइट्स के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में देखते हैं, जहां बार्टर
Sir, only one request, Vivek sir, only one request. If you can do a share in Hindi and English, because we have a lot of
okay sir,
Sorry,
thank you.
sir. Yeah,
So
yeah.
as Arpit sir has mentioned that has also read this particular rule 27, that the value of supply shall be the open market value of such supply. The same analogy can be noticed in case of supply of development rights. Okay, though that particular notification, that is 3/2019 central tax rate and 4/2019 central tax rate, though these notifications have been backed by section 15 subsection 5 inter alia, where the value of development rights is determined in a separate manner, and the value of construction services given by the builder is determined in a separate manner. Even though this is the barter transaction, but the single value has not been picked. Of course, Rule 27, Sub-Rule A, Rule 27, Clause A is giving a very precise answer to this. But just to give a view that in case of barter transaction in the real estate sector, they have also, pick a different formula for both of the ends. I hope it is clear to you.
Yes, Vivek,
Yes, sir. Yes.
Thanks for the value add.
Sir, I
So
have a question, if you allow me to ask.
Yes, sir. Please.
Sir, a very basic question I'm asking. As we know that for a supply in general, there has to be a consideration. And in case if the consideration is, even if the consideration is not there, the activities or transaction specified in Schedule 1 is treated as a supply. When I read Schedule 1, item number 1, just a minute.
Yeah.
Just a minute. Yes. So it says that permanent transfer or disposal of business asset where ITC has been availed on such asset. So my question is, in case when I'm, giving a particular business asset or a goods without charging any consideration to unrelated person. Okay.
Yeah.
So even though I am charging, that is also falling under the scope of supply. And when I'm not charging anything, then also it falls under the scope of supply as per item number 1.
Right.
Right. And in such a case, it is just an observation. You have to give the comment on my observation. In such a case, I'll have to go with the valuation as per Rule 30. Is it so?
No, in this case, Vivek, whenever Schedule 1 is attracted only when there is no consideration, isn't it?
Yes.
But when you are already taking consideration, then it will not come under Schedule 1.
I'm not charging anything from the unrelated person. Say my friend comes to me at my shop and I give a particular product to him just by virtue of my natural affection. Okay. Now the question arises whether it is falling under the scope of supply as per section 7 subsection 1 clause A. It is not falling. But when I read Schedule 1 item number 1, it says that whenever there is a permanent transfer of a business asset, when I have taken the ITC, it is going to be it is to be treated as a supply. The question comes, then the second question comes, what shall be the value? As per my understanding, the rule 30 will give the way on that how to derive the value of.
Also, would it be worth going through Schedule 1 route or go to 17.5 reverse the input tax credit?
That is the next question, sir. I was just, trying to fix it over here, and then I thought that I shall go for that.
Yeah. I think according to me, reversing the input tax credit would be the right, because 7 technically fails, no consideration, no supply. That's what my view is.
Vinayji, in my opinion, Rule 30 would be the correct rule, because Rule 27 is applicable wherein there is a consideration. And if that consideration is not wholly in money, where there is no consideration, therefore 27, 28, 29 would not be applicable and 30 would be applicable.
Yes, yes.
And regarding applicability of 17.5H and Schedule 1, see, both of them have to, we cannot make one provision redundant and other one always applicable. So in my opinion, how the thing goes is that once I receive some input, supposedly I have received a laptop, and I do not, I intend to give it as a gift, then obviously the intention is pretty clear. So therefore, what I would do, I would not claim the ITC, and I would reverse the, I would not claim the ITC initially only by virtue of 17.5H. But supposedly, let's take an example that I have purchased certain wood items, I have purchased certain hardware items, I have purchased paint, and out of that, I prepare one small table, and along with that, all other things are also being manufactured. Now that small table is now being given as a gift to some person. In that case, I would not be able to identify what is the ITC, because I have taken the ITC of all the goods which have been incorporated, though I am not able to identify the quantum of the goods. So in that case, since the ITC has been availed and the goods are being disposed of by way of as a gift, so in that case, in my opinion, on a comprehensive reading and making both the provisions applicable, Schedule 1, Para 1 would be applicable.
Applicable, and I think it will be RPG more than applicable. It will be easier to go for Schedule 1, Para 1.
Yes.
So may I also join in, please?
Sir, definitely.
Yes, Gurjit sir.
Yes. Sir, if we think about it, logically, it is a value-added tax in every transaction. At last, the government has to get a tax. So 17.5H says goods, like Arpit sir has very rightly said, goods stolen, destroyed, or disposed of by way of gift, you don't avail the ITC. So whatever the last transaction had happened, that was the revenue which will go to the government. If it is becomes a supply, maybe under Schedule 1, then there will be a value addition because of open market value. And Schedule 1, that entry says that if ITC has been taken, that means effectively government is not getting anything out of the entire chain of that movement of the mobile phone, the example we are taking. So government has to get something. Either it is the last transaction value, or if the current transaction, even by way of giving of gift, that is taken as a supply. So if ITC is availed, then it will become a Schedule 1 transaction. If ITC is not availed, disposed by way of gift, then that value addition will not be there. The tax on the value addition. It may end up being a contentious question that revenue may say that it is supply because they will get a value addition. But then the SSC can say, we have not availed the ITC and we have disposed it by way of a gift, and the chain of the transactions has ended at that point itself. That will be my view.
Aruti, if we go through circular number 92/11/2019, which was on gifts and treatment of reversal of ITC in case of gifts, in page number 2 and para number 2, if I can share the relevant screen.
So, ma'am, you have to stop sharing the screen. So, Arpit, you will share.
Yeah. Done.
See, this is the para number 2. What it partly addresses the query which was raised by Vivekji also. Further, this is for free sample and gifts. Further, clause H of subsection 5 of section 70 of SEDET provides that ITC shall not be available in respect of goods lost, stolen, destroyed, written off by way of gift or free sample. Thus, it is clarified that ITC shall not be available to supplier on input service and capital good to the extent they are used in relation to gifts of free sample distributed without any consideration. However, where the activity of distribution of gifts of free sample falls within the scope of supply on account of provisions contained in Schedule 1 of the SEDET, the supplier will be eligible to avail the ITC. So therefore, once I have availed the ITC, then I have distributed as gift. In my opinion, this circular also clearly provides that since it falls within the ambit of Schedule 1, Para 1, therefore the tax would be levied and ITC at the same time would also be allowed.
So, RPG, there is a need to distinguish between the word goods and permanent transfer or disposal of the business asset. I think, we have to dig into this. So every permanent transfer cannot be regarded as a gift, or every
once I have availed the ITC, my claiming of ITC is fixed, and then if I fall within the ambit of Schedule 1, Para 1, therefore I would have to follow that part. I cannot go and say that I have reversed the ITC, thus I have complied with the provisions of 17(5)(h). See, we have to agree that both of these provisions are overlapping.
Yes.
And they have to read in a manner that meaning is taken out so that both have applicability. We cannot make a one provision redundant, speaking that we have complied with 17(5)(h), therefore Schedule 1, Para 1 is not applicable. In my opinion, Schedule 1, Para 1 clearly says that once the ITC has been availed and then the business assets are disposed of, permanently transferred, then it would be a supply without consideration falling within the ambit of Schedule 1.
So what's your takeaway? We have to go with Schedule 1 or we have to go with 17(5)(h)? In my view, yes, please.
And I reverse the ITC, 17(5)(h) is applicable. But if I have availed the ITC and I have made a supply without consideration, that is a gift. In that case, since the transaction of giving a gift is subsequent to availment of ITC, therefore in this case, Schedule 1, Para 1 would be applicable.
Could you re-clarify it? I could not get it.
Supposedly, I have purchased a laptop. Now, at the time of purchasing of laptop, I was pretty clear that I have to give it as a gift. So therefore, I did not avail the ITC following 17(5)(h). In the second case, supposedly I have purchased a laptop. I intended to use it for my business. 6 months down the line, I intended to use the business, therefore I availed the ITC. Now 6 months down the line, I gave it as a gift to some person. In that case, since the availment of ITC has already been done and supply is a subsequent transactions post availment of ITC, therefore in my case, to have a harmonious interpretation and applicability of both the provisions, in that case, Schedule 1, Para 1 would be applicable.
I agree with
One thing which I would like to also highlight in respect of the para 2 of the circular 92, which is there on the screen, what it says is, thus it is clarified the input tax credit shall not be available to the supplier on the input services, capital goods, to the extent they are used in relation to the gift or free samples distributed without consideration. So the words they have used is that in relation to. So not the that the particular goods or the particular thing which has been gifted or given as a free sample, but which is used, and something was manufactured, and that manufactured good was given as a gift or free sample. Perhaps that raw material or the input would cover here or not cover here, because the word they have used is in relation to.
This is just a clarification. If you read 17.5H, you won't be able to find this particular phrase in relation to.
Correct. But in a circular they have given.
So circular is not the law. No, they are just clarifying it. So I think, we need not to apply the rule of interpretation over here.
What is your view, Arpit?
No, in my opinion, if someone has purchased a raw material and then they have manufactured something and then they are giving it as a gift, in that case, in my opinion, Schedule 1, Para 1 would be applicable. Because the ITC has been availed and then a subsequent transaction of supply is being made, which is specifically falling within Schedule 1, Para 1. 17.5 is applicable because if Schedule 1, Para 1 would not have been there, I would always have treated that whenever I am supplying anything as a gift, I would be in compliance of the law if I reverse the ITC. But since there is a provision which covers a subsequent activity, therefore once I have availed the ITC and then I am giving it as a gift, in that case 17.5H loses its applicability and Schedule 1, Para 1 would be applicable.
Arpit, I want to say something. Nilesh here. When we say we have reversed the credit, if I'm not wrong, Chandrapur Magnum or some case is there of the Supreme Court, which says the once you have reversed the SENVAT credit, it means you have not availed the SENVAT credit. So if I reverse the SENVAT credit, input tax credit under 17.5, it means I have not availed the credit. So Schedule 1 will not play into that case, right?
In my opinion, when we are applying the pre-GST regime judgments, we have to see that what is the provision of GST at present. And the provision of GST in Schedule 1, Para 1 is specifically covering an aspect which is subsequent to availment of ITC. If this aspect is taken that whenever I come across, I would be reversing the ITC and I would be in compliance of the law, then Schedule 1, Para 1 would be redundant. And whatever decisions we have read up till now, any interpretation which makes a provision redundant is not taken up by the courts. So harmonious interpretation has to be given to both the provisions.
Agree, Arpitji. But when we say harmonized construction has to be given, either you have to take the output liability or either you have to give the input tax credit. If we apply both the provision, then it will be redundant in that say. One of the provision has to be get redundant.
No. They are giving the input tax credit because they are saying once you have availed the credit and then the goods are being given free of cost. So there are two conditions. You must have availed the credit, which has been done. You must have transferred the goods without consideration, which you are doing. Now, once you have transferred and then you say that I am reversing the credit, therefore Schedule 1, Para 1 is not applicable. In my opinion, it would be something which is subsequent to the taxability being becoming applicable on the supply part, wherein the goods are being given as gift.
No, then I will read it in a different context. If 17.5H we read, it says gift. So Schedule 1 government is happy to accept your tax output liability. When it will come 17.5, it says it is a gift. It is for without consideration. So you have to reverse the credit. How can you say it is output tax liability I have paid? Hence, it is not a gift because gift will remain the gift only in that case.
We can agree to disagree. But my only submission is that we have to interpret the law in a manner, because in that case, what my opinion is, reversing of ITC in most of the cases would always be beneficial. Okay, and Schedule 1, Para 1 would become redundant in that case. So if we give a harmonious interpretation, yes, reverse the ITC, but once you have availed the ITC and there is a transfer, then Schedule 1 Para 1 becomes applicable. Subsequent reversal of ITC would not take you out of the clutches of Schedule 1 Para 1. This is my interpretation. However, I also go with the interpretation. This is something wherein there are always two views. It's up to the courts in future to accept or reject what view they take in future.
Yes, sir, Piji, that is the interpretational matters have to be settled by court. So one more distinction between both these sections 17.5H and schedule first, the entry number 1, that is in clause H, the words used are goods. This schedule 1 entry says business assets. So that could also, though all goods are business assets, but that can again, while interpretation battles resume, then they start, then those interpretations, and is there a distinction between these two words? All that discussions will happen, and finally, then it will be settled in that way. Finally, like we can take the example which was shared by Soumya ma'am today. Courts are also very, say after the first round from AAR to AAAR, it went to the High Court. Court just said that it is not a composite supply. The question, maybe the question before the court was that court did not interpret anything. It just remanded back saying it is not a composite supply. Think over it again. Now again, it went to the advanced ruling authorities. They said it is not a composite supply. This time they said it is a supply because of this. Now we are discussing the valuation parts because we have to advise, we have to discuss things with our client. We have to say how you should carry out those things. But as far as the settlement of law is concerned, it takes time. It evolves over time after interpretation, and courts will also specifically address only the questions which is addressed to them. So maybe in a later point of time, the business assets and goods may be distinguished, and like it has been said that the goods which are being manufactured, that is in clause H, business assets is which we take as fixed assets, though stock in trade is also classified as an asset. So these interpretations will come later on, and it will have to be settled down later. For now, there is a conservative approach we take with clients, because that is what RPG is suggesting, that to avoid issues, government will be very happy if a open market value or little higher value and the value added tax is there to the revenue will not object to the client. If it is just ITC is reversed, they may raise objections, and then interpretations would have to be provided, and we'll have to look how it settles down the line.
Yes, Gurjiji, and there are few more issues which I would like to add to what Soumyaji has said regarding section 7. And this is an open-ending issue. Let's think over it and come to a conclusion whenever we meet for the next time. See, there are 2-3 issues which I would like to raise before the members to have their views in the subsequent session, not in the present session. When we speak about section 7, the section 7 subsection 1, it starts with what for the purposes of this act, the expression supply includes. Now, what is there that it is having an inclusive definition. Now, whenever the term includes, when it is referred, no, I would not be saying that supply is having an inclusive definition. This is something which we have to deliberate. Whenever the term includes is there, it means that the original meaning would be there and it is an inclusive definition. It is not an exhaustive definition. So if we take that by the term, by using the term includes, the government has only given an inclusive definition and not an exhaustive definition. So therefore, anything which has not been comprehended up till now and not specifically covered in 7A, B, C, it would also be covered being in the original meaning of supply. This is one thing which we have to see, that what is the scope of the term includes, because there is a decision of in the case of Peerless Finance versus Reserve Bank of India, wherein Honorable Apex Court has said that by default, yes, the term includes may signify inclusive definition, but if the context of the statute says, then includes can also mean means and includes, but thereby meaning an exhaustive definition. So the first is the implication of the term includes. Then second, 7.1 speaks about all forms of supply of goods or services or both, such as So all forms of goods or supply, all forms of supply of goods or services of both are being the subsequent word following this phrase is such as. So if we go through the interpretation of the code which has been given to the term such as, that means a exhaustive list has been given, wherein if we go by the interpretation of the term such as, that means all forms of supply of goods or services which are falling within the ambit of sale, transfer, barter, exchange, license, rental, lease or disposal will only be covered, and if any other mode is there which is not covered within this ambit, then it would be outside the scope of supply. Third and the most important aspect is that when 7A speaks that all forms of supply of goods or services, so any transaction should be falling within the ambit of supply of services first, and then once it falls within the ambit of supply of services against consideration, then only it would be falling within the scope of supply. Because if we go through section 7.1a, 7.1a says where activities or transactions constitute a supply in accordance with the provisions of subsection 1. So the first part, that how to classify a transaction as service, supply of service or goods is, first we have to go to 7.1. If 7.1 is satisfied, then 7.1a, 7.2 and 7.3 would be applicable. Because if we go through section 7.2, it says notwithstanding anything contained in subsection 1. So therefore, by virtue of this non-obstinate clause, 7.2 seeks to override 7.1. So the first thing which I would like to highlight in this case is that a transaction should fall within the ambit of services. Now, if we go through the definition of business, which has been given in section 2, now there are transactions from A to I which have been given within the scope of business. And if we go through, there is a section 2 clause 17I, which says any activity or transaction undertaken by the central government, state government or any local authority in which they are engaged as public authorities. So this is the definition of business. Yes, what I am trying to highlight is that the services which are being provided by the government, and by virtue of section 2 clause 17I, any services which are being provided by the government are tried to be included by the department within the scope of supply. In my opinion, yes, it might fall in business, but before falling into the business or before falling into the scope of supply, the transaction should be falling within the scope of service. And service is something wherein two parties mutually come to the table and they agree to a thing, and either of the party has the option to back out in case he does not agree to the terms of the contract. So there has to be a free and fair dealing between the two parties. In cases wherein I am obligated to avail the services from the central government at a price being fixed by them, in my opinion, it would not be falling within the scope of service, because it is not a case of two parties coming to the table with a free hand and to decide whether or not they enter into a transaction. The transaction might be falling within the scope of business. I do not dispute that, but the transaction is not falling within the scope of service. So in my opinion, whenever we are discussing about a supply, the first thing which we need to see is that whether at all it is a supply of goods, that two parties coming to a table, both being felicitated or getting benefit of the contract, and both having a free and fair hand in deciding the scope of supply, scope of service, and equally the scope of equally the amount of transaction. So 7.1, the flow, the scope of 7.1 by the term use of the term includes, and 7.1a, the scope of all forms of supply of goods or services by the use of terms such as. This is something which, if we can think upon and come to a conclusion in the subsequent session, although for initially 10 minutes, it would be a great add-on for the interpretation of section 7. And last but not the least, the taxation of immovable property. If we go through the definition of service, And the definition of service in GST, if we go through the definition, it is there. It means anything other than goods, money, and securities. So anything which is other than goods, money, and security, it is falling within the ambit of service. And in my opinion, the immovable property, it is also falling within the scope of services. Once the immovable property is falling within the scope of services, Schedule 3, Para 5 excludes only land, sale of land and building which is being constructed after the completion of after the issuance of completion certificate. So from the entire scope of immovable property, only thing which has been taken out of the scope of services, sale of land and building to the extent of completion after the issue of completion certificate. So what happens to the development right? Because if we go through the definition of immovable property in General Employees Act, therein the definition of immovable property includes rights arising out of the land. So, and if you go through the minutes of GST Council in, I guess, 10th GST Council meeting, wherein they said that they intend to include the immovable property, the sale of land and building within the scope of services. But initially for the 2 years, they are excluding it by way of Schedule 3. So whenever they want to include back the land and the completed part of building, they don't have to amend the constitution. They would only be required to amend Schedule 3. And by that amendment only, the entire scope of land and the building part would also be covered within the scope of supply. So in this context, or in any other context which the courts have interpreted, or someone can add to it, if we can discuss about the taxation of development rights and whether they are outside the ambit of GST or not, or what are the constitutional or the contentions or submissions one can make. These are the 4 issues which I think we can deliberate upon, so that we can have a much broader understanding of the scope of supply and the use of various terms within the scope of supply.
Thank you, Arpit. I think that makes sense. I think in the next discussion, we'll take this. So maybe we'll plan it today as to how we'll take it, and we'll also speak to the speaker who would be interested to take it up, and then I think take this discussion forward. So I think, Arpit, will you share the vote of thanks to Soumya ma'am?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. She is the first speaker on this platform to have extended the session to 2 sessions.
Yes.
So this is one thing, and shows the dedication of the speaker, that she continued the topic for 2 weeks and shared such thought-provoking issues on the scope of supply. And this is something which we can go on deliberating, because this is the basic and the fundamental section for GST, and the interpretations are innumerous. So, and the toughest part for the speaker is to limit the scope of knowledge which she has to only 2 sessions on such a vast topic. And she has done it wonderfully, and there are so many issues which are before us. And see, Arupji, we all are distinguished faculties of ICI. So nobody needs an introduction that what is the scope of supply, and nobody needs a hand-holding in terms of how the interpretation has to be made. So the best part of this session is that these sessions gives us the point to think upon, and interpretation can be made by any of us on the lines as we expect, as discussed by Gurjeet ji correctly, that the courts would be taking their own view, and it is upon us that how we interpret and put before the courts. So these 2 sessions were a thought-provoking sessions and raising so many issues, and all of us are competent enough to make their own views. And somewhere down the line, hopefully when the issues would be settled, we would say that this issue was first raised in our discussion in the 2 sessions of the supply. So thank you very much, ma'am, and for such a detailed session. We will keep troubling you in future.
I mean, for me, it was a very good learning experience as well. I mean, we will never revisit such basic sections, though they are very, very important. And once we start reading, we realize the depth of each section and how much of thought has gone in behind, has to be put in order to understand the correct interpretation. While I was thinking on the 8 forms of supply, I was also thinking, what about assignment? There is this word assignment which is not mentioned, but usually this also happens in business, that they assign the rights. So whether it is outside the supply or within the supply, something one thought that I'm leaving with for all of you to think about. So it is not exhaustive in my view. The definition of supply is always inclusive, and it is over and above what it states. This is my view. But anyway, it is all for everyone to think and conclude.
Aruti,
Thanks a lot.
at the end, I would like to say that there is a one common misunderstanding between the persons who are dealing in GST कि सर GST अब तो basic हो गया, आप notification पे बात करते हैं, but the basic will always remain the statute which we are going to read, and the statute will never get old, and it is up to us to how to keep the statute new for us, so as to keep bringing new issues from that statute only.
Yeah, because the basic things are the things I think wherein confusion happens most, because we take them for granted. ये तो पता है, now let's move beyond this. So I think that is there.
And Supreme Court is required to give the judgment on how the comma is being placed in the statute. So nothing is basic in statute; everything is advanced.
And department is also coming up with its own new and fanciful interpretations of the law.
Yeah, that we saw in holding company matter, no? That
Yeah.
supply by holding company. So all these things will happen, and because they happen. But one good thing about GST, I was sharing I had taken a session recently, so I was sharing there that service tax, central excise, they have a one-way communication. Only during the budget some changes used to happen, and we could give representation, but changes would never happen. But under GST, we are fortunate that it's a video game, it's interactive. So we are getting show cause notices, we are making representations, clarifications are coming, show cause notices are getting dropped. So that thing is there. So one way we are fortunate that this thing has developed.
GST is an online real-time basis interactive session. You get a reply on Twitter also from the department.
Yes, so that is there. So with
And
this,
that's what makes it more interesting for us also, and to be on the on the run.
Yeah. So continuously there are changes. So with this, we are fortunate that today also we'll close the session on time before 10:30. These are our deadline for the session. So thanks to all the participants for joining in from across India, northwest, east, south. I can see people. So thank you so much, and please do come visiting every Saturday morning, because we have made this fixed ritual of Saturday morning 9 a.m. so that you don't have to block your diary separately. Ki next session kab hai, kya hai? Or there will be a session. Maybe the topics would be not known to you, but you can always join. I'm sure that whatever topics we are deciding, they will be of immense value to each one of us. So with this, I'm signing off, and we all are signing off. Thanks to Arpit ji for again being the wonderful moderator that he is. Thanks to everyone for joining in.
Aruji, one thing, we are seeking speaker for the next session. Anyone who is present here can volunteer for the next session. We want a speaker for next session.
Yes, please do send a message. Ajay, Renuka ma'am wants to volunteer. Okay, Renuka ma'am, I'll just get back to you, then I'll speak to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.